It all starts here at Boardwell Park in Riverside. Clues to this unsolved murder led detectives to the arrest of 17 people, part of a large gang operation in the Inland Empire. On December 22, 2020, 32-year-old Cedric Dempsey was found shot in the head. Investigators say they located the suspect in of the father of 9 just about a week ago.
At first glance, this quiet cul-de-sac looks a lot like many of the other streets in the Casa Blanca neighborhood in Riverside, but looks can be deceiving. And on Thursday, El Sol Way was the focal point of a large-scale gang bust. All of these people arrested, including these 4, now charged with
big developments right now in the unsolved murder of a teenager gunned down because of his race. Lorenz Simmons was shot and back in 2012 as he walked to his grandmother's house. Well, today, police announced 2 arrests.
Riverside police are trying to keep everyone safe, too. They just arrested over 100 people here in a 3-day sting called Operation Street Sweeper. 44 people were arrested for selling narcotics.
Nestled in the heart of Southern California's Inland Empire, the city of Riverside carries a rich legacy from its citrus grove, beginnings to its pioneering cultural landmarks. Home of the historic Mission Inn, an alma mater to legends such as baseball, Great Barry Bonds, and the jazz soul powerhouse, Etta James, Riverside has shaped lives and stories alike. Yet beneath its sunlit palm trees and academic halls, many neighborhoods have also wrestled with persistent gang conflict and street violence. In this city of champions and creators, the underground battle for territory and influence has left an ever-present shadow on communities, forcing Riverside's law enforcement and residents to choose whether to stand by or step in.
On December 22, 2020, 32-year-old Cedric Dempsey was found shot in the head. Investigators say they located the suspect in the killing of the father of 9 just about a week ago.
Detectives served a search warrant at a residence in our community after receiving information the suspect was manufacturing and selling firearms to gang members.
SWAT officers arrested 50-year-old Arthur Akins III, but it was during this investigation that authorities across the Inland Empire focused on another in Moreno Valley, also back in 2020. Suspect Darnell Tate was linked to Akins, who investigators say played a large role in a gang. Detectives believe Akins sourced weapons to gang members across the Inland Empire.
5 of the handguns were ghost guns, and the detectives also recovered a 3D printer to manufacture those.
In all, 17 people were arrested for various felonies, including weapons, drugs, and pimping charges.
In late 2020, police linked 2 seemingly separate deletions to the same gang. On December 22, 2020, 32-year-old Cedric Dempsey was found shot dead behind Boardwell Park in Riverside. At the same time, the Riverside County Sheriff's was investigating a June 7, 2020 demise in Moreno Valley. 43-year-old Kevin Henderson was found shot near his apartment on Myers Avenue. Detectives from both jurisdictions realized their cases were connected by a local criminal street gang. Starting in 2021, Riverside PD and the sheriffs, joined by the district attorney, CHP, and DOJ Special Operations, conducted a coordinated probe. They executed numerous search warrants and interviews. On May 6, 2022, sheriff's deputies arrested Darnell Frederick Tate for Henderson's demise. 2 weeks later, on May 21st, Riverside robbery homicide detectives arrested Arthur Lawrence Akins III, 50 years old at the time, for Dempsey's demise. Investigators announced that Akins was also being booked for Henderson's demise. The May 2022 sweep, Operation Walk in the Park, netted 17 felony arrests and a large cache of weapons and drugs. Altogether, authorities seized 55 firearms, including assault rifles and homemade ghost guns, plus sizable quantities of drugs. Riverside PD credited the joint operation with taking those weapons out of circulation and holding gang members accountable for the deletions.
This quiet cul-de-sac looks a lot like many of the other streets in the Casa Blanca neighborhood in Riverside, but looks can be deceiving. And on Thursday, El Sol Way was the focal point of a large-scale gang bust. All of these people arrested, including these 4, now charged with. Riverside police say the recent string of violence on El Sol Way started last January with a fight in the street.
An uninvolved neighbor nearby shouted from her house to break up the fight, and in response, they shot her repeatedly.
She survived, but a month later, a rival gang member was beaten to death in this street. Then in September, another innocent man was shot and while driving down the street. These are the 4 gang members Riverside police say were responsible. They say this man, Edward Smith, pulled the trigger.
Between January and September 2019, the Casa Blanca neighborhood of South Riverside was terrorized by a string of gang-related attacks. Police and DOJ special agents joined a task force called Operation Blocc Buster to dismantle the Casa Blanca Gangster Crips, blamed for multiple violent crimes. In one early incident, on February 8, 2019, 22-year-old Jordan Love was beaten at an El Sol Way residence. He suffered severe head injuries and died days later. Police later identified Kelvin Taylor as the assailant. Taylor pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter in 2023. Also in early 2019, a female resident who yelled at a noisy street fight on El Sol Way was shot by gang members. She survived her wounds. Finally, on September 1, 2019, William Felix Calderon was gunned down while test driving his van on El Sol Way. Investigators recovered surveillance showing gang members directing the shooter to hit the next vehicle down the street, making Calderon an innocent target. By January 2020, authorities had arrested 4 suspects in Calderon's demise.
Today, 2 arrests made in connection with the murder of Loren Simmons. Let's get right to those booking photos. This is Christian Velasquez and Manuel Barberin, both arrested after police got information, they say, back in August of 2014. They won't go into a lot of details about how this tip came through and how they eventually made these arrests, but these men both incarcerated right now on unrelated charges. Police say the 2 guys are reputed gang members, and they gunned down this 14-year-old just because of his race. We spoke with family members who came to today's press conference. They are elated about these arrests.
If you ever lost a 14-year-old, you can tell me what closure is, you know, but every day I cry and I think about God and I'm happy, but this is the happiest to know that they're going to be held accountable.
On February 23, 2012, Larian Simmons, a 14-year-old sophomore at Riverside Poly High School, was fatally shot near his grandmother's house. Simmons had been walking home after visiting a friend when a car pulled alongside and its occupants opened fire. He stumbled close to his grandmother's driveway but collapsed. He spent several days on life support before dying of his wounds. Simmons was an honors junior ROTC student with dreams of joining the military or becoming a police officer, and he had no gang affiliation. In 2015, authorities announced arrests in the cold case. 2 members of the Eastside Rivas gang, Christian Velasquez and Manuel Barberin, were charged with first-degree deletion in Simmons' demise. Prosecutors alleged the shooting was racially motivated. Simmons was African-American, and the Rivas gang had a history of targeting black residents. The demise was treated as a hate crime with special gang enhancements.
There's a new buzzer on the front door at the Camp Transformation Center in Riverside, after the gym says a homeless man brought all his belongings inside, refused to leave, and turned violent.
He did punch me in the face in the lobby, and then when we went outside, he proceeded to pull out a knife and threatened to poke me multiple times.
Eric Salgado owns the gym. He's one of many small business owners along the Magnolia Corridor in Riverside who've made complaints to police about an increase in crime. The Northgate Market says shoplifting has been out of control for years. Riverside police are trying to keep everyone safe too. They just arrested over 100 people here in a 3-day sting called Operation Street Sweeper. 44 people were arrested for selling narcotics. Riverside Police Chief Larry Gonzalez says state laws like Prop 47 and 57 have made it much harder for police to do their jobs and minimize jail time, allowing people out committing crimes to fall deeper into addiction and homelessness. He says most of the people they just arrested were homeless, struggling with substance abuse issues.
In spring 2024, the Riverside PD Narcotics Unit targeted open-air drug sales along the Magnolia Avenue corridor between Van Buren and Pierce Street. Dubbed Operation Street Sweeper, this undercover sting aimed to dismantle a homeless-driven drug market in several motels. Over 3 weeks, officers made 46 separate purchases of various drugs from the suspected dealers. Each buyer was typically a transient motel resident. After gathering evidence, police conducted a multi-day raid on May 2024. They identified 44 drug-selling suspects. 33 were arrested and booked for narcotics sales violations. In addition, 71 other individuals were taken into custody for unrelated charges, including parole and probation violations, outstanding warrants, felony and misdemeanor, and trespassing. The total number of arrests was 104 people. Riverside PD noted that nearly all arrestees claimed homelessness. The chief reported that crime calls and emergency medical calls along Magnolia Avenue immediately and significantly decreased after the operation. The raids turned up more than drugs. For example, one motel room search discovered a woman wanted for a 2022 felony DUI crash and a man with an outstanding burglary warrant. Officers also found thousands of dollars in stolen merchandise in the room. City officials said the operation disrupted a high-volume drug hub and made the neighborhood safer in the short term. In early 2025, Riverside police announced charges against Juan Nieto Sanchez, aka Sleepy, a lieutenant in the Sur Riva Tiny Winos gang, for abuse of an underage girl. Nieto Sanchez was already in custody on a separate parole violation when detectives uncovered that he had engaged in a relationship with an underage girl. The investigation revealed that Sleepy used social media to contact juvenile victims both while he was in prison and after his release in October 2024. Authorities have charged Nieto Sanchez with felony abuse against a child and warned there may be additional victims who have not yet come forward. In 2018, Riverside police launched Operation Eastbound and Down to counter a wave of violent crime sweeping through the city's east side. For months, investigators tracked a sharp rise in gang-related deletions, attempted deletion, drive-by shootings, and armed robberies. The violence was driven by rival crews fighting for control of the area, and detectives began seeing familiar names, individuals recently released from custody resurfacing in new acts of retaliation and intimidation. On October 18, 2018, authorities executed the takedown in coordinated pre-dawn raids across Riverside and nearby cities. The results were sweeping. 45 suspected gang members and associates were arrested, and 63 firearms, including 13 assault rifles, were recovered. Officers also seized large amounts of narcotics, cash, and gang paraphernalia. Prosecutors filed charges against 25 suspects, including 22 adults and 3 juveniles, with counts ranging from attempted deletion and aggravated assault to firearms and drug trafficking offenses. In early 2017, more than 200 law enforcement officers carried out a massive coordinated sweep across Riverside County, targeting the Westside Riva gang, one of the region's most violent criminal organizations. Beginning just after sunrise, teams of deputies, SWAT members, and federal agents executed 16 search warrants at homes throughout Jurupa Valley, Riverside, and Ontario. The operation was part of a months-long investigation into gang-related shootings, assaults, and narcotics trafficking that had plagued the Inland Empire. By the end of the morning, 8 individuals believed to be members or close associates of the Westside Riva gang were taken into custody. Their charges ranged from participation in a criminal street gang and felon in possession of a firearm to probation violations, drug manufacturing, and child endangerment. Authorities said the suspects were part of a network responsible for terrorizing neighborhoods in Rubidoux, Jurupa Valley, and surrounding communities. Inside several of the targeted homes, investigators found an alarming cache of weapons, including 2 AR-15 rifles, a modified 12-gauge shotgun, a .22 caliber semi-automatic rifle, a 9 handgun, and hundreds of rounds of live ammunition. Detectives also uncovered a clandestine honey oil lab hidden inside a residence on Jalany Lane in Moreno Valley. The lab was being used to produce concentrated cannabis oil using butane, a highly explosive process that put both residents and nearby homes in serious danger. Officials said the Westside Riva gang had long been tied to a pattern of gun violence, drug trafficking, and intimidation of residents. The coordinated takedown marked one of the largest gang crackdowns in Riverside County history. Following the raids, all 8 suspects were booked into the Robert Presley Detention Center on a variety of felony charges. Several were held without bail due to prior convictions and probation violations, while others faced gang enhancement allegations and firearm possession counts. Prosecutors said the investigation would continue as additional suspects and associates were being identified through evidence recovered at the scene. The discovery of the honey oil lab added a new dimension to the case, showing how the gang had expanded its illegal activity from street violence to drug production and distribution. Law enforcement officials emphasized that the Westside Riva gang had long been one of Riverside's most entrenched street gangs, dating back decades and historically connected to the Sereno network. They described the operation as a warning to other local sets that the era of unchecked violence and drug manufacturing in Jurupa Valley was over. These operations are more than headline figures in case files. They reflect a city wrestling with its past and trying to chart a safer future. When gangs lose their grip on blocks, residents gain something far more valuable than arrests: the freedom to walk down their street without flinching, to let children play outside, to hope for better days. Riverside's story, to borrow from its legacy of citrus groves yielding fruit, shows that in hard ground, good things can still grow. What remains is the work of nurturing those seedlings, so the shadows of conflict don't reclaim the space that belongs to people fighting to live well in their hometown.